Hello and welcome to the Fourth Tier Fever podcast. And we've just hit 1,000 subscribers. So I just wanted to say before we start, thank you. It's been a goal of ours for a while, so to hit it is just incredible. We're on 500 subscribers in February, so to double that by April, it is amazing. I've only joined midway through, but I know how hard these guys have worked, both the podcast host and behind the scenes. So it's credit to them, and I'm sure they're enjoying the rewards of that. But it's only just a start. We are trying to push for even more through the end of the season, through the summer, and hopefully next season and onwards. Please do anything you can. Subscribe, tell anyone you can, and I'm sure we'll have another goal in mind very soon. So thank you for that, and let's get into the podcast. And I'm joined today by three of the other four podcast hosts. We'll go round, but how's everyone tonight?
Yeah, okay. Look, you could speak at my wedding if that was anything to go by with that speech. I know how hard these guys have worked. But no, you've been a great part of this. But yeah, just a quick personal thanks as well. I think probably Luke and Keiron would probably say the same. Probably Jake was if he was here. But we really do appreciate your support. So it's put me in a good mood. The grind doesn't stop, though.
Yeah, I'm warning you guys now. I'm in a good mood.
Oh God, here we go.
Oh yeah, I had to get the manager pun in early, but also the whole 1,000 subs is absolutely mental. We really didn't think we'd get this far this early, so just thank you to everyone for tuning in and doing your bit. We'll do our best to repay your trust in us.
What I would absolutely love if my football team would transpire the mood and the ambition and the growth that this podcast has had over the past few months. But yeah, thank you all for 1,000 subscribers. Be honest with you, from a personal standpoint, I cannot wait for the season to end. But there's still quite a few fun things to talk about ahead of that date, which is what May whatever, the beginning of May. Buzzing. But yeah, appreciate it, guys. Thank you. More to come. You know the score.
Like you say, Keiron, it's not great to be a Newport fan at the moment, sort of waiting for that season.
When is it great to be a Newport fan, Jack?
When is it great? Has it ever been?
I've been actually clocked out of the season from a Newport perspective since, end of January.
There was that one playoff campaign I can remember. I don't know why. That was a decent season.
You know the ironic one, Jack? There was another one that I remember. I don't know why I remember either of them. So the joke for everyone else who may not be watching League Two, as far back, Tranmere and Newport played in a playoff final a few years back, and guess who won that based on his lovely comments and the fact that we're still here.
Absolutely. But that's lovely stuff. We're going to organise this podcast slightly differently. I know the guys left two of the important relegation battles in relegation battle games that was played over the weekend that we're going to talk about them now. And then if you don't support one of those, don't worry. We're also going to cover Salford, Doncaster, and then all the midweek games, not midweek, all the Friday games that are going to be happening and covering those sort of midweek. But yeah, to start, I did just want to touch on that game with the bottom two in League Two, Morecambe versus Carlisle. Going into it, we seemed to have the impression that both of them were down, regardless of the result. I think it was mentioned that Morecambe's only slight glimmer of hope would have been a win against Carlisle in that game. Obviously, in League Two fashion, they didn't get it. But I can't take my eyes off that potential escape for Carlisle now. I don't know about you guys. It's just 2 wins on the bounce. They're only 6 points away with 4 games remaining. Jordan, what did you make of the game, first of all?
Yeah, well, I didn't really see anything. I obviously just saw the result, but it certainly makes things interesting down at the bottom, especially from a Carlisle perspective. I know there's obviously still work to do. They're still 6 points behind, 4 games to go. They've got time running out, but I think the saving grace from that is the fact that one of their games is against Accrington Stanley. And again, that could be massive heading into the final few games. They've got they do have 1 or 2 difficult games. Port Vale is their next one coming up on Friday. Of course, going well at the top. Cheltenham have nothing to play for, so there might be a chance there. And then Salford, not out of the promotion playoff picture yet after last night's draw. We'll get into. So it almost felt that this was a must win. Obviously, they came, they had that comeback win against Newport. Hi, Keiron. I know how impressed you were, but it seemed to all of a sudden it's given them that glimmer of hope. Don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of work to do, and there's no little games left. But it was always a game. I think when we talked about it, it was a game that I think neither team should have, and that neither team could afford to lose. And it was Morecambe on the wrong end of it. I don't see a chance they get out of it now. Absolutely no way. They're near enough. I think they're 7 points adrift, unlike Carlisle, but I just don't see the quality in the squad, and it's the same problems coming into roost that they've had all season. But it's a glimmer of hope for Carlisle. I'll certainly give him that. It certainly makes things interesting with that, especially I think with Accrington's result as well. It makes things that little bit more interesting heading into the final few games. Obviously, like I said, a lot of work to do. I don't see how Morecambe get out of it, but it's something for Carlisle in a season which they've not had much.
Yeah. So Jordan thinks it's all over for Morecambe now. Luke, do you have any thoughts, or is it done now?
I mean, I'd love to say it's 100% done now, just because my team is still a little closer than I'd like. We're not mathematically safe, but yeah. No, it's more than likely over. I think, especially in Morecambe's case, at 7-point gap, that's 3 games just to catch Accrington on the edge, and then they've only got 1 game spare. So that there's no margin for error anymore. Even if you're looking at Carlisle, that's 6 points, 2 games away, and then the additional 2. Especially when one of those is Port Vale as well, it's not going to be easy. I think more than likely it's over, but just because of how League Two's been this season, I wouldn't be surprised if something dramatic did happen right at the very end. It's just very, very unlikely.
You just can't rule anything out this year.
That's it. The League Two is so many ups and downs. Top to bottom. I know you guys talked about it on the Sunday podcast. Right at the top of the table, there's so many twists and turns, and it's happened right down at the bottom, thankfully in my case. Keiron, do you think Carlisle still have a chance, or what are your thoughts?
Mathematically, yes, but probability, near none. Let's keep it, that as clear as it is. Carlisle have had that thing since they've appointed Mark Hughes of, we're playing better, but we're not getting the results. But as Luke alluded to, there's no margin for error now. They cannot afford to drop points. And not to mention, and I think this is the one thing that, hasn't been mentioned, it's not in their hands. They could go and win every single one of these games, and you could have Accrington and Tranmere who just win a couple games and bats them down regardless. It's no longer in their hands, and I think that Tranmere, Accrington, maybe you say Harrogate to a push will probably notice that, and there's probably another win in there somewhere for each of those sides. I don't really see a hope for either of them. I feel like if Morecambe were to win it, maybe there's a little bit more leeway. There's a little bit more of a potential for them to come back from it. They would have been a lot closer. But no, I don't see it. Twists and turns, top end is fun, but let's be fair, we've probably known who's going down or who is going to be relegated since probably January.
January's a push for me. I think we had a really good or a really bad opportunity of something falling into that trap of the relegation, I guess. But
I suppose you had that opportunity, but then at the same time, neither Carlisle nor Morecambe took advantage of that.
Yeah.
So I feel like when Tranmere were in that absolutely horrendous run, the fact that neither of them capitalized on it probably set it in my eyes.
Yeah.
But there's just not enough going about for either of those teams.
I think, like you say, I don't think Tranmere's been in the relegation zone all season, and that considering the season we've had, is an absolute statement of where the two teams who are in that relegation zone are at. I think we're all in agreement that it's pretty much over, but I'm still, the League Two in me is just saying Carlisle might have a chance, or it might go down to the final day for them in Accrington. That's partly because I went and saw Accrington Stanley last week, and we'll get onto that game now. I mean, it was a huge game at the bottom end of the table. Obviously, Tranmere had a magnificent comeback from 3 goals down at half time against Accrington Stanley. Never mind half time, with about 20 minutes to go, they were 3 goals down, and they still came back. It's a game that's gone viral in the world of English football and social media. This week, it's been absolute chaos after that 3rd goal went in, and some would probably describe it as proper limbs. But yeah, I mean, Andy Holt will be annoyed. I don't think he gave Tranmere even half of that away capacity, so he'll be annoyed that the headlines were about Tranmere fans. But it's certainly a game of about 2 halves, really. A game that finished off with probably 3 goal of the season contenders, and maybe in my opinion that might be biased, but I mean, wow, what a game, Jordan. What do you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to praise the character shown. Obviously, 3-0 down at half time to essentially a relegation rival. It's looking pretty bleak, but I mean, you look at the goals Tranmere did score. My God, all 3 goals are, there's a touch of quality in all 3 of them. Unfortunately for you, not the best goal of the day. Keiron Green, Sir Keiron Green, would like a word with that, but yeah, just 3 terrific goals. That, and of course, that Patrick equaliser was wonderful, and the bodies behind the goal were something else, I've got to say. For Accrington, it's a huge kick in the teeth. It's got to be said, because I think any, if any team won that game, I think they'd be pretty much there, or probably would be there. Probably not mathematically, but probably would be there. I'm really interested to see how Accrington get on these last 4 games, because they haven't won in 6 or 7 or something like that, and a result like that could ruin them, to be quite honest. Obviously, as mentioned, they've still got Carlisle to play. A couple of other games as well. We've got Chesterfield still fighting, and they've got Salford themselves, and Walsall. So that they've got a very tough set of games coming up. They might get 1 or 2 points just to squeak over the line, but if they're not careful, I mean, look, we've mentioned about Carlisle. There's absolutely no room for error for them, but even for Accrington at this stage, I think if there's going to be one that's going to drop down, it'll be them. It will be them. I think Tranmere will be more than fine, especially under this, this recent run of form under Andy Crosby. Done a terrific job there since he's been appointed interim charge. It's certainly a much better point for Tranmere in the circumstances. And of course, what a way to do it as well for them. I mean, from three goals down, I'd have loved to have been in that away at the weekend. It looked.
It certainly did look like a good time. You just paused there.
Yeah, no, bloody hell.
But yeah, it wasn't bad. I mean, you've worded it perfectly, Jordan. And I think you've alluded to the fact that there is no margin for error. But I mean, that's going to do something to those Accrington players. I mean, on the run that they were on, 3 goals up to not take 3 points is an absolute travesty. I mean, Luke, what do you think of Accrington? That's got to do, something to those players' confidence. And really, I know we've talked about Carlisle and their chances of staying up, but are Accrington going to get many more points, or is that a huge worry for them now?
Well, I mean, I've spoken about it a lot, the importance of mentality in football, and that right there is a mood killer. To throw away a 3-goal lead, and especially with the run you're on, as Jordan was saying, that's 6 without a win. And I mean, before that, they obviously had the whole 5-0 against Newport. Had to mention that. Sorry, Keiron. But no, I think it to lose that, well, to not to lose, but to waste that lead is just a huge downer for them, really. And when you're looking at those 4 games, as Jordan was sort of alluding to there, I'm looking at all 4 of those and thinking all of those teams, as things stand, have something to play for. So there's always going to be that edge to every game they're playing until they are mathematically safe. they're always going to be playing with that sort of cloud over their heads, and it's a very tricky way to be finishing the season. If it does sort of get a bit mixy towards the end, it will definitely be Accrington, because those fixtures are not nice.
Can I just say just one thing as well? We've mentioned about obviously the 6 games that that Accrington haven't won. 4 of them have been draws. I know there's obviously that game in which they'd be surely hurting by it, and I think it'd be wrong to assume anything different. But they have, they picked up points against Gillingham, Swindon, and Bradford before that, so they are capable of getting 1 or 2 points. And to be quite honest, I think with how it is this year, maybe 1 more win might do it. It's just one of those. But if you're looking, maybe, let's say they pick up no points on the next 4 or maybe 1, I still think there's a little bit of trouble. I think it all depends on what Carlisle do. I feel like I'm still trying to give Carlisle the as much hope as possible here. But it's just something just to be wary of, I think. But Accrington they are capable of getting 1 or 2 points. So we'll have to see, I guess.
I mean, for me, even 1 or 2 points is probably enough. 6 points.
I think a win does it. As I said, I think 1 more win, I think they'll be much more comfy than what they are now.
I mean, looking at 4 games, then you're asking Carlisle can't lose a game then, because they're 10 goals behind on goal difference. They're going to be really struggling. But technically, numerically, all still to play for. I do want to talk about Tranmere's interim boss. I feel like we've not really touched on him slightly as much as I want to. I mean, what an influence he's had on Tranmere's season. Now 4 wins, 4 draws from 9 games. That's an incredible stat from 1 win in I think 20-odd games for Nigel Atkins when he was in charge. That's a huge shift in momentum, in form. And I think I'm always hesitant when an inexperienced manager gets appointed. We've seen it quite a few times over the past 5 or 6 years, really. And so I always end up creating a checklist for him. He's not totally inexperienced. He's had League One managerial experience, but he's still fairly new to the game. And I think always first off, you look at those primary tactics, you look at those performances straight away. Can they pick up results? Can they improve in performance? Because that's what you want from any manager. That's all that managers are really judged by, and I think that would be a resounding yes in Andy Crosby's case. And then you've got to look at the attitudes of the players and the attitudes of the manager and how he presents himself. And again, they're all enjoying themselves and a lot more than what they were, a month or 2 ago. And I think, again, you can see the confidence in the players now, which is something huge. And clearly he's done well in picking up those players. And then I was looking at, I did really worry about how he would do with being behind in games and coming back. And then, I mean, that game at the weekend proves it. 3-0 down, he come back 3-all, and you can clearly see that he's not afraid to change certain personnel and really go for the win. And whatever he did at half-time really clearly worked. But for him, as interim, there's still 2 boxes that just haven't been ticked, in my opinion. I think his ability to change formation for a sort of lengthy period of time for a game or 2 games. And don't get me wrong, we haven't needed it by any stretch of the imagination. I'm happy him staying as he is. But for an experienced manager, I can't see how he is with that. And that's my only worry. I'd be interested to see if we do need to change a formation, how he copes with it, because I think his tactic has been really strong, but it will go wrong at some point. Someone will find a way around it, and it's about combating that and seeing how well we can sort of navigate that. And then the other aspect is building a squad. I think it's something that I found a lot of fairly inexperienced managers struggle with. And that's another risk that you just can't confirm until it happens. I think that's probably one of the big ones is, can he build a squad with the money that we might have from a takeover? Can he use it effectively? They're the only 2 worries I could possibly have from him. Obviously, he's interim at the moment. Surely he's got to be in a shout with a permanent deal. I would say he's well within his right to demand that deal, to be honest, with how he's done. Although there are those sort of small question marks for me. What do you think, Keiron, in terms of keeping Andy Crosby for the Tranmere job? Do you think he deserves it? Or
I mean, truth be told, if you still had Nigel Adkins now, you'd
Would be
be with
fine.
Morecambe.
Yeah.
You'd be far from safe. For all we know, you could be mathematically down by now. So
Easily.
I think that the one thing that interests me when you were talking about that was the whole recruitment thing and the building a team. I don't think he's really had a chance to do that, and I think that's something that's worth a punt. I think, albeit, I think the main concern that you had throughout your talking there, and it's definitely an important one, is obviously the inability to change formation and setup and whatnot during a game. But I'm always within the thought process that that will be learned over time. And at the end of the day, like you mentioned, it hasn't been needed. So, it's not. I'd imagine he's probably working. He's been working on that, but because it's going to be needed at some point. Like you mentioned, it's all going to be his ideology and the way he plays football and the way he gets his team set up. It's going to get cracked eventually. It happens with every manager, and you'd imagine he's thinking a step ahead. That's what any kind of, I'd imagine, manager would consider. So, I mean, based off of now, yeah, give him a deal. And my other dang question is, what better is there out there than someone that's been with that team for a little bit, especially transitioning into a potentially new takeover? There's going to be a lot of uncertainty. Having a coach there or a manager there that has been around the club for a little bit and will be able to help those players with the transition alongside himself. I don't see why not.
Yeah.
Why not just throw a deal at them?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he's not had the chance to do those sort of two question marks that I've had. He's not had that chance. I think that's one of the things, it's only with experience can you tick things off, and he's ticked certainly a lot of boxes for Tranmere fans that maybe didn't think he might tick when he came into the job. I mean, when he was assistant, I was amazed that he decided and he wanted to be an assistant. I thought he was of managerial standard and he should continue to do that after his time at Port Vale, albeit he got sacked. But he showed that promise. I think it's certainly within his right to have that chance at Tranmere. My only thought is with so many things changing and moving, those in charge might have a different opinion and might try and bring in a bigger name, but we yet to see. But yeah, he's well worth a shot. And if he doesn't, I'm desperate for him to go for another managerial job, even in League Two. I think he could do it. Maybe somewhere who's not got that much pressure, but especially in the National League, he's well within the right for a manager job, surely. What do you two think about it? Or
Yeah, I think that he deserves a crack, doesn't he? I think for what he's done since he's come in, and he's just given the place a lift, given the players a lift, and it looks like he's going to get them over the line. And that's not a mean feat considering how down in the dumps Tranmere were and the players were. So he deserves a lot of credit for clawing them out of it. Of course, you've mentioned some of the concerns you have, but I think they're just unknowns, aren't there? Like, I think you mentioned that he's not completely new to the game. He does have some experience with Port Vale. I just think it'll be wrong if you don't do it. Of course, there's obviously the owners, these new owners that are supposed to be coming in might have the different ideas, but I think they've certainly got to have him in their thoughts, because the upturn in results and maybe performances as well. I mean, now look, you keep banging on about it. How many times do you score like 2-3 goals in a game? You have done recently, so they're not being freak for a club like Tranmere, in which they've struggled with those sort of stats for a long time. He deserves a go. He deserves a go. What's the worst that can happen at the minute? I say that like there's not much. There completely is, but you just don't know unless you try it.
Yeah.
And it also just sort of pays him back a little bit. That's if he wants it. If he comes banging on the door tomorrow saying he wants the job, he's got every right to do that. Yeah, I think you'd be stupid to at least not have a conversation about him taking on the job full time. To be quite honest.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, to get on about managers, we'll move on slightly from Tranmere, but I mean, Luke, I've got to ask you, Paul Warne, surely a good appointment, right?
Well, I mean, it has to be, surely. I mean, if you were listening to the previous episode, you would have heard me going on about how this was by far the best option, and anyone we bring in now will be underwhelming. And that was when Warne initially sort of rejected us. And obviously, since he's changed his mind, we've upped our interest, all the rest of it, and we've got him in. And I think that was the only way that could have possibly been a good outcome, because we've got our guy. It does, of course, mean a huge sort of culture shift for the club, which is what a lot of people are sort of picking up on already. This whole sort of MK way, you have to have 70% possession and only score goals at a tap in from like 2 yards out or something. We're moving away from that, which there is an element of risk there, because for the last decade or so, that's pretty much what we've been working towards, being successful in that style of play. But there comes a point where it's just about results, and we haven't been getting the results. And ultimately, we just need to get ourselves back up to League One at a bare minimum, and hopefully push back towards the Championship as well. But that's a long, long way away for now.
Yeah.
It's just about getting that sort of winning culture back into the club. You've got a manager there that's got 4 promotions from League One, 3 with Rovers and 1 with Derby. He's never dropped as low as League Two, but he's proven at a higher level. And then his assistant is Richie Barker, who has previously been at the club, knows the club very well, worked with Cole Robinson when we first got to the Championship. So it's a bit of a no-brainer. That combination there, I think that sets us up quite nicely. And the summer's going to be big. It's going to be a quite a big sort of shift for us, because I don't know how we're going to figure out the squad, all the rest of it, but it's a huge step forward for us. I can now confidently say, whatever the problem is in the next year or two under Warne, the manager is not the problem. If something's going wrong, it's something else. It has to be.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a good appointment, and I think if you're going to want anyone who is on your shortlist, or rumoured at least, it would probably be Paul Warne. And I think you can only hope to improve over the summer, and we'll see where you're at next season. But I might put you slightly lower in my predictions, because I predict you to finish first every season and keep getting underwhelmed. But there's another team that's very similar. I'm going to move on to the Manager of the Season awards that have been announced today or yesterday. And I mean, that team is Bradford City, who've got their manager into the Manager of the Season awards. It's Graham Alexander, Darren Moore, Matt Sadler, and Andy Woodman. I know, Jordan, you wanted to talk a little bit about this. Are you happy with those 4 names, or is there a certain Grimsby manager that should have had a shout?
Well, I think Darren Moore and Graham Alexander deserve their shouts. They were 2 sides that were clearly, well, certainly from their fan base, expected to do well. Port Vale expected to be up there, and I didn't really see this coming from Bradford, because they've been quite stale in League One, if that's the word for it, a little bit. So he deserves all the praise that they get. So I don't doubt those 2 for a minute; they're deservedly in there. I question the Woodman pick, if I'm going to be completely honest. Not denying the job that he's done at Bromley. They've had a terrific season either way. I just feel like for 1 or 2, it just feels like they expected Bromley to go down. And I never, ever saw that. I never saw that at the start of the season. I thought they'd be more than fine. And obviously, he's got them to, for a little bit of the season, there wasn't a bit of a playoff push. For Bromley's first ever season in the EFL is a fantastic achievement. And as much so for their FA Cup run. Don't get me wrong, they've had a brilliant season. Not denying that at all. I know I'm sort of like dissing Keiron's mate here for it. And Matt Sadler. I don't know. I don't know about Matt Sadler. If the season finished, halfway through, then he'd have won it by a country mile, and there's no doubts about it. I question now for the fact that they might not even get top 3, and if they make the playoffs, they're not. I don't think they're fancied. I don't even think their fans have fancied it. For it, this drop up has been quite something, and it'll be a catastrophic failure if they don't go up. And you do have to put a lot of that on the manager, as much as you do look at the playoffs. I do look at some other managers you've mentioned that. I do think David Artell deserves to be in with a shout, and I think that it's ridiculous that he's not. We're currently in the playoffs at the minute. I think you could probably say the same for Danny Cowley. I think, them for in a similar situation, they could still make the playoffs. If he was there for the whole season, Ian Holloway, I think for what the lift he's given Swindon since he's come in has been extraordinary. I think they're now, 11th or something like that, playing some lovely football, scoring goals. I honestly think that those three have more of an argument than certainly someone like Woodman. But you can see why Matt Sadler's included. I'm just not sure for the second half of the season. They've done what, 2 wins in 16. It's just not great. And I don't really know who gets decided, but I don't know. I was a bit torn when I saw that. Like I said, not denying Moore and Alexandra, they deserve to be in there. And look, I guess fair play to them. I do think there's probably 1 or 2 better shouts, if I'm going to be honest. That's just what I think. Come at me all you like, but that's just the impression I get, to be quite honest.
Matt Sadler's definitely the sort of question mark I have. How they've had this horrendous run of form, and fans are calling for him to be sacked.
That's the thing. Fans are calling for his head.
Yeah,
they're not liking him at all at the minute, and I think that's what feels like it just feels weird. If you know,
it doesn't.
It's got a weird vibe to it.
Start of the season, absolutely, but the dynamic at Walsall at the moment, it just doesn't seem right. I get your point about Woodman. I think, for me, I put them rock bottom. Sorry, Andy, if you're watching. I wasn't sure about the investment that they were going to get more than anything, but they've proven me wrong.
I just thought all the shouts for Bromley to go down, I thought were ridiculous. I think I saw that no team has been relegated in the EFL since the 90s, 80s, 90s. I think that's a big indication. If you saw Bromley in the National League, and yes, you can maybe question budget and all that, how they'd make the step up. I always thought their style would more than suit League Two. Absolutely more. Suit it to a T. Obviously not to the impact for them or what they've done, and certainly for someone like Michael Cheek, who of course is part of the Player of the Season vote. But I just don't. I never really understood that impression, to be quite honest.
Yeah. It was just one of them things with the investment that they've got. But I mean, they've certainly proven me wrong. And if you haven't already seen the podcast, go and watch it. It's an episode with Andy Woodman, Bromley manager, which is a huge podcast. And I wasn't there for it, but I'm sure it was a great experience for you too. I know Keiron's good friends with him now, so that's all good. But he shows how good he thinks his side has been this season. I think he has certainly proved me wrong. I'll hold my hands up to that. Another name I'd mention, probably Grant McCann, was Doncaster, but probably expected to be there or thereabouts. Obviously, just aware of time, but Luke and Keiron, who would be your sort of 4 picks for manager of the season quickly?
I'm going to jump straight in. I'm going to defend Woodman purely just on a resources basis. They have very, very little in comparison to the clubs they're competing with. And even now with 4 games to go, it's mathematically possible for them to make playoffs. So that's still insane. They're fighting at the right end of the table, albeit it's probably not going to happen for them this season. But it's been a very sort of controlled season for them, and they've done so well to get up there. I think in terms of the 4th one, I would agree. Sadler definitely should not be in there at all. If we're talking about control, Walsall have none. They're in freefall. It's as simple as that. And that's not a side that are in control of their own destiny right now, albeit it's still possible for them to get it right. I'd agree with Jordan that Artell definitely deserves a mention there. For me, it's between Artell and the Cowleys, because if you're looking at control and building projects, I think both of those have done it perfectly, and they're both fighting at the right end of the table as a result.
Yeah. Keiron, who would be your 4?
Yeah, I mean, Darren Moore, Graham Alexander, spot on. You can't argue with him. I'm at a point with the whole Walsall situation where, the mention of the Cowleys, that's a better option. Grant McCann's a better option. I'd even go as far as saying Paul Cook is a better option. I'd potentially even go as far to say Stuart Maynard at Notts County is a better option than Matt Sadler. that one, the thing
Furious.
that I'd argue it, and I think when you're given Notts County, who were incredibly inconsistent, and fans are one in their head, the fact that you can make an argument for that probably suggests that, yeah, Sadler, I don't agree with that one. Really, really don't. I could argue Stuart Maynard over him, which is bizarre. That being said, if you were to give me a top four, Moore and Graham Alexander, yeah, they're fine. Agree with them. I'd probably say David Arcell as well. I would chuck him in there, just out of where they were last season to where they are now. And then I'm kind of 50-50 on either Grant McCann or the Cowleys. I'd probably lean towards the Cowleys just out of expectation to reality kind of thing. But yeah, it's a difficult one. All I know is that Matt Sadler would not be anywhere near it.
I'm in total agreement with you, Keiron. Just aware of the time, I'm going to slightly skip over the Salford Doncaster game. I mean, it was a huge game in that promotion race. Both teams dropping 2 points, really. Salford slipping slightly further away from those playoff places. Doncaster, again, same again, but from the title charge. Not a great result for either, really. And teams are suddenly dropping points. Well, not suddenly, it's been happening all season, but dropping points where they really could have gained an advantage. We will go to those midweek games or Friday games. Just aware of the time, we will just get a quick prediction from everyone for each game. But I mean, the first one tomorrow night, Bradford City versus Notts County, an absolute title charge for Bradford City. Notts County trying to cling on to the playoffs. Both teams have sort of had not a great recent run of form, slipping up where it matters. Starting with Jordan, then we'll go through it. But who do you think wins that game?
Up the Bantams.
Fair enough.
Never did I think I would hear you say that. Never in a million. I'm audio clipping that.
No, look, Bradford are at home, aren't they? Notts haven't been great. It just feels right, doesn't it?
Yeah, Luke.
Yeah, I think I'm agreed on Bradford. To be fair, I know they dropped their home result a while back to yourselves in Tranmere, but aside from that, their home form has been spectacular, and I don't think there's any getting around that. Notts also have their question marks over Maynard. I get the sense that the vibe there isn't quite as positive as it is over at Bradford. I would expect Bradford to get the job done.
Yeah, Keiron.
I just want to sound different, so I'm just going to say a draw, just off of the basis that Bradford have dropped points at home to weaker opposition. That's my only justification for that. Every part of me is leaning towards Bradford, but I just want to sound different.
You've absolutely stolen my answer there. I mean, you look at the past 5 games for both clubs, they've both had 2 losses. Notts County have lost the past 2 games against 2 playoff contenders. They're slipping up where it matters. Bradford lost to Swindon in dramatic fashion and will have their heads hung low from that game. I can only see a draw. I can only see both teams slipping up. And the only way for that to happen is obviously through a draw. I think that would be 2 points lost for both sides, but that's the only way I can see it happening, unfortunately. Moving on to Good Friday. AFC Wimbledon against Chesterfield. Starting with Jordan. Obviously, Wimbledon, again, probably just trying to stay in the playoffs at this rate. Chesterfield are trying to nick their spot. Who's going to have the 3 points?
Yeah, it's a tough one to call, this one, because obviously Wimbledon could really do with a few more wins heading into the season, because their playoff spot is far from secure. You get that Chesterfield could really do with a win to keep their hopes alive. It's really tough to call this one. A win for Chesterfield can see them literally right outside it, like a point or 2, dependent on other results. But then there's also that chance in which Wimbledon can drop out of it ever so close if they do lose this. I think it'll be a draw. I just can't call this one, to be honest. I think there's there's quite a lot at stake, I think, for both in this one.
Yeah, Luke?
Yeah, it's a really tricky one. AFC have only won 1 in 5. Chesterfield's form's a little bit better, but then equally they're a bit hit or miss against the sides towards the top end of the division. So it's a hard one to call. I don't think Chesterfield will be quite as strong away from home. You also got to factor in that AFC's captain, Jake Greaves, is suspended. I don't know what sort of impact that will have on their midfield. I'm going to do the same. I'm going to have to sit on the fence here. It's going to be a draw.
Yeah. And then Keiron?
I don't want to be the guy to agree with you all, even though I'm very much on the fence. I think it's going to be close. I don't think there's going to be, either team to blow the other out the water. But I'm going to lean Chesterfield slightly, just out of the suspension that Luke mentioned, the iffy form for Wimbledon. I'm going to lean Chesterfield's way.
Yeah, I mean, I've shown my concerns about Wimbledon. I mean, especially on our 5 games to go pod with my prediction of them not being in the playoff places. I think without Goodman goal and without Matthew Stevens, they'd be nowhere near. That's just my honest opinion. Matthew Stevens now 1 goal in 12 games, and he rarely plays a full 90 minutes. There's not promising signs for them, in my opinion. I think their only reliance is on the keeper to keep a clean sheet or to keep it at 1 or 2 goals, and they can still nick a couple of goals to equalise. That's my only sort of hope for them. But I would go for a Chesterfield win on that one, which is a shame for Wimbledon. But they've got to do anything they can now to keep that playoff place.
Luke will get a smile out of that and heavily disagree with you, Matt.
Oh, I'm sure. Next game, Bromley versus Morecambe. Bromley, obviously, we just talked about, and Morecambe, we talked about in this episode. Morecambe done and dusted. Bromley possibly with a little playoff push. Who are you thinking, Jordan?
Maybe with that playoff push, I think it's very unlikely now, to be honest. A lot of ground to make up in 4 games, but never say never. But it's just seemed very unlikely. I think they'll be too strong for Morecambe. If I'm going to be perfectly honest, it'll be another nail in Morecambe's coffin. I expect them to get the job done, and they'll certainly want a response after that 5-0 drubbing at Port Vale. I did listen to Woodman's interview. He sounded quite down about that, as you'd expected him to be. I think he'd want a response from his players as quick as he can. I think they'll get it here.
Absolutely. And I think Woodman, again, if you're listening, I hope it wasn't our fault that you lost 5-0. Please come back for another interview at some point. I promise it's not us. Luke, are you thinking Bromley win?
Yeah, I mean, the stats back it up. And I mean, Jordan's made a perfect point there. Bromley are going to want to bounce back, even if not for the sake of playoffs, just for the sake of, having a bit of pride in yourselves. Morecambe, meanwhile, they've lost every away game they've played in 2025. Their last away win was Boxing Day, and that was against Carlisle. So it's kind of hard to back them here, even though they've got so much to play for at this point. It is that crucial point, but I just can't get past Bromley winning that game.
Yeah, Keiron?
Sorry, it's so ironic that Morecambe haven't won an away game in 2025, yet we're the worst team away from home. I just have to point that out. I find it so funny. But anyway, yeah, Bromley battered them by 4-0. I can't see a reality where Morecambe get out to it. There's no better game to respond from a 5-0 drubbing to top of the league than to them playing bottom of the league on home soil. There's no better way to respond, and I think they'll do it perfectly.
Absolutely. I'm in agreement. Bromley win. Next one then, going from 24th to 23rd, Carlisle United against league leaders at the moment, Port Vale. Jordan, Port Vale win?
Yeah, I think we were banging on about Carlisle. Can't really afford to have really any more slip-ups, and they're playing the best team in the league at the minute, who I expect to win the league. I know I saw a couple of comments in there when I did my predictions about Bradford to win it, and I think I even said there I've swiftly changed my mind. Changed my mind. Yeah, I just can't see anything but a Port Vale win, to be honest. I mean, if Carlisle were to get a result, I mean, if they were to pick up 3 points, it's a massive one, for the sake of their season and for the sake of the title fight. But yeah, I just can't see anything past a Port Vale victory on current form.
Yeah, Luke, same again.
I mean that would make a lot of sense, wouldn't it? I think Port Vale are obvious favourites to win this one. The only sort of redeeming factor for Carlisle is they've won their last 2, and as we say, it is crunch time now. They have to win. I don't think they've got enough in them to take a full 3 points, to be honest. But they are okay at home in recent weeks, so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and give them a point. I'm going to say it's a draw.
Fair enough. Keiron?
Port Vale win, routine. Next.
Yeah, same again. I think Port Vale win.
Sure.
In the terms of League Two, it would be fun to have a draw or a Carlisle last minute winner, but I just can't say it. I think Darren Moore's sides are too good to let that go. Cheltenham versus Gillingham. Who really matters?
Don't care.
The-
I don't care.
Yeah, I'm just going to say Gillingham win. Who cares?
Gillingham win for
Draw.
Keiron.
It just sounds so boring.
Luke?
Gillingham are unbeaten in 8, and they've just got their win thanks to us. So yeah, Gillingham win.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think Gillingham win. That means they're both on equal points. Why not? Colchester versus Crewe. We will talk about Cheltenham and Gillingham in more detail in a future episode, I'm sure. But a game 16th versus 17th, it's one of those. Colchester versus Crewe. 2 teams pushing for those playoff spots. Jordan?
It's obviously a must-win for Crewe. If they don't win this, then that is their playoff hopes over. I was speaking to some of my mates about it today. I think we've looked at Walsall's recent drop-off these last few months. I don't think Crewe gets talked about enough, to be quite honest, as to where they were at the start of the year. And the fact that, with a few games left, they're very much at risk of not being in this conversation. If they don't pick up anything less than a win here, they're out of that conversation. And as to where they were, it'd be well, not it doesn't look great. I think Colchester. I think they've got to take advantage of them on home soil. I say home soil. I'm not sure how much. They might as well just play on it. They ain't got much grass left. I'm sort of hoping. I don't know. It keeps Crewe alive. I think if we're looking at it from, of course, we're looking at it from a Grimsby perspective. I don't know, probably draw. Just keep Colchester away. No, I think Colchester will get the job done, to be quite honest. And I think Crewe are done. I think they know they're done, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I think they've had some injuries, to be fair, which possibly due to that drop off, but it's not been great for Crewe at the moment. Luke, what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I've got to lean towards Colchester on this one. Crewe away in recent times haven't been very good. They've won 1 of their last 5 away games. Whereas Colchester, the only game they've dropped at home recently was the Grimsby game. The rest of their home games, they're picking up at least a point. Most of the time, it's free. I've got to be honest, I think Colchester win this.
Yeah, Keiron?
I just want to sound different again.
Mr. Different.
Draw. Both teams know they have something to play for. They'll be potentially a little bit hesitant to unleash that usual creativity that they both had. But if you're leaning one way, you're leaning Colchester's way. Let's be fair.
Yeah, complete agreement with you there. I think Colchester will get the win. But they do both have something to play for, so it'll be an entertaining game, I'm sure. But I just love Colchester's side and managerial. In terms of the Cowleys, I just like them, and I think they're going to get that win on Good Friday. Next game, Fleetwood versus Barrow. It is 13th versus 15th, so if we all just shout out the opinions again.
Draw.
Barrow.
Okay, Barrow for Jordan, draw for Keiron. What are your thoughts, Luke?
Yeah, this one's Barrow. They're unbeaten in their last 5 away. Meanwhile, Fleetwood haven't won in their last 5 home games, so there you go.
Yeah, I think it's
Draw
a game
because it's funny.
I think it's a game where both sides are looking to rebuild next season. They've both made really good managerial appointments. but it's just going to take time and it's going to take a summer rebuild. So they're both probably waiting and sort of on the beach, if you will, waiting for that summer window to open. Next one, Grimsby versus Swindon. Grimsby trying to keep in those playoff places. I mean, Jordan, you'll be the expert here. What would be your opinions on that?
Not a game we should take lightly. I think this, I said in the week that this Swindon team under Ian Holloway are dangerous. One thing I did say, there's obviously the whole Holloway thing with us and how much we hate him and all that sort of stuff. I think we need to just put that to one side. Because if we do that from the off, start abusing him from the off, that's just, it will just motivate him. That's just the sort of thing that he thrives off. And that's just Holloway's character for you. They're an entertaining side, Swindon, but I'd like to think we are. I think there's a few players in that dressing room that will want to prove a point after, Saturday's late collapse. And like I said in the pod the other day, I've got no doubts about this team. They have fought back before. And I trust them to do it again. This team's got a lot of credit in the bank. It's going to be a difficult game. I think it's one we have to win, really. I think looking at the other teams and where they are and all that sort of stuff, it's heading like a bit of a sold-out Blundell Park. We've not played the best where it's normally full. We've normally tend to lose it. I'm going to back us. I'm going to back us just to get the job done. I won't be surprised if it's another goal fest, to be honest, because both of us certainly like to score goals. Swindon do in particular. We both like to concede a fair few. So it could be a goal fest, but I'm going to back us just. But I want us to take the emotion out of Holloway to one side and focus on the task at hand, which is obviously still fighting for a place in that top 7.
Fair enough. I mean, Luke, what are your thoughts on that one?
Well, I mean, Swindon have had a very good last sort of 3 games, but at the same time, Grimsby are still a strong side, although they suffered a little bit of disappointment at the end of the last game. The rules of the craziness of League 2 would state that this is now a game that Grimsby wins, so I'm going to back Grimsby.
Yeah, and then Keiron?
He's going to go different again, isn't he? Just to annoy me.
This one's hard, isn't it, really? Truth be told, you know what? If Grimsby can drop points to Harrogate, they can lose to Swindon.
We always drop points to Harrogate, though, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, but okay. Here's my.
All right, in a way, we did it was awful. But...
Jordan, you might want to turn your volume off for this one.
Sure.
Yeah, you might want to turn the volume off, man. Yeah. I'm gonna say that Ian Holloway does it. He gets one over Grimsby rather, for Swindon's sake. I'm gonna say Swindon win it.
For me, it's still Gillingham. Not Gillingham. That'd be amazing if Gillingham won in that game.
He actually turned the volume off. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Oh, it's all right. I said a Grimsby win anyway.
No, I didn't. I agree with you, Grimsby win. MK Dons versus Newport County. We will mention it, even though it is 18th versus 19th. I mean, obviously, bear in mind the time. Should we just shout out again?
Yeah, I think it's going to be an MK Dons win, isn't it? Paul Warne, first game in charge against a side that are awful away from home. It just seems right.
Yeah, Luke?
I mean, Newport have lost their last 5 away. We've lost our last 4 games, which is the most we've lost in a row this season. But the Paul Warne effect, I don't think we're going to see any changes in style as such. But I think, mentality-wise, this should give the players a boost. And I really hope I'm right on that. I'm back in the Dons.
Yeah, and then Keiron?
I couldn't care less, truth be told. I really don't care. Like, there is nothing about this club I'm currently attached to. MK win. I don't care. I really don't.
I'm going to say Newport win, and I don't know why. It's just got that feeling of a rocky start, and then...
So we get interesting for the table.
Yeah.
The FTF table as well.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, you know what? Maybe I should care about it then.
Salford versus Accrington. Salford obviously just trying to click onto those playoff places. Quickly, Jordan, your thoughts?
Yeah, Salford aren't out of this yet, are they? And but I think it probably might just take one result if they lose a game. I think they'll have a bit of the bit of an uphill battle, but I fully expect them to beat Accrington, to be honest. That they have been quite good against the sides lower down in the table this season when they have played, and I expect them to do the job.
Yeah, Luke.
Yeah, I mean, Salford are unbeaten in 6. Accrington haven't won in 6. Yeah, it does lean towards a Salford win just to keep their hopes alive. But also, can we just acknowledge just how much of a say Salford have on the relegation battle at its close? You know, they play Accrington, they play Morecambe, they play Carlisle. They pretty much decide who goes down.
Fair, is it? Like, you get to play all these sides, and
Absolutely.
it makes me worry. But we need to be looking up actually as well, because we can still catch Notts and Wimbledon. I'm going off on a tangent again. Go on.
Keiron, your thoughts on Salford Accrington?
Just because of how boring the bottom 2 in League 2 has been literally all season. I'm going to say Salford win just because of that. Just give me something to look forward to at the bottom end of the table as well. You know, closer to home and all that.
No, I'm happy with that. Salford win for me. Tranmere Dons.
Can we just give the bottom sides all like plus 10 points and just, I don't know, take 10 points off Newport?
You know what? Hold on. Can we just get... No, because this is the reality. You could give Newport 100 points now. Mathematically winning the league no matter what. We'd still
You said you wanted a non-league tour before we started recording.
I did say that. But anyway, you could give us 100 points. We could be top of the league, confirmed champions. We'd still finish 18th. So
it's looking that way still. Tranmere Doncaster. Doncaster win for you guys, or what are your thoughts?
Not plain sailing. I think Tranmere will be up for it. I think rightly so on form. I just think that, you know, Doncaster has still got quite a lot to play for. Obviously joint points with Walsall, which we'll get onto in a minute. But you know, I think it's a bigger game for them, truth be told. I think they'll just be too strong.
Yeah. Luke, your thoughts?
I mean, both sides are in, you know, pretty good form. The only thing with Doncaster for me is it's just they've been very frustrating at getting draws instead of wins. On this occasion, I think it's now at the point where it's kind of last chance saloon, because their games after Tranmere are Colchester, Bradford, and Notts. You know, this is the one they 100% have to win just to get at least one of those wins on the board. So I'm going to back Doncaster, but I do think it's going to be very, very close.
Yeah, and then Keiron.
I'm going to basically use all of Luke's points and say draw, because that's what Doncaster are good at, not meeting expectation. They've done it all season.
Yeah, I think I've got that worry for Doncaster, so I'm going to say Tranmere win. I think we're just in some good form right now. Walsall, Harrogate, falling down. Harrogate seem to be safe. Jordan, your thoughts?
Yeah, Harrogate pretty much there. I don't think they've got anything to worry about. Obviously, they're at Walsall. I wonder if they'll do what they pretty much like to do away from home and just sit back for 90 minutes and play for a 0-0. Because I feel like that's just in the DNA of Harrogate. Walsall have got to come out and attack the life out of it, haven't they? You know, it's the sort of games that we are now, and you know where the pressure's on. Really, you know, I think I mentioned it. You know, with these run of games coming up, it's a favourable few games that Walsall have, but they've got to get wins from there. You know, for a side that's woefully low on confidence and very much at risk of dropping out the top 3. I think they certainly seem likely at the minute. It's going to be tight. You know what? Let's give Walsall that win. I think they've been craving for quite a while. I think they'll just about find a way.
Okay, and then Luke.
Stolen my thunder there. Harrogate have only won one away game in 2025, and that was against Barrow on the 4th of January. So that was their first away game of 2025, and they've not won one since. You know, with Walsall, yeah, if you can't win this, then yeah, you're definitely not getting Alsos. So for me, this has to be a Walsall win. It just has to be.
Yeah, and then Keiron.
It has to be a Walsall win, but we've been saying that for the past 2.5 months. I don't think it's going to be a Walsall win. I really don't, because I generally feel Harrogate sit back and get a 0-0 out of it. Because I don't see... I think the term to describe Walsall for me, toothless. That's what they are, and I think that's what they're going to be until the season closes.
I'm in complete agreement with you, Karen. I think it's going to be a 0-0. I think Harrogate are going to hold on, and it's going to be those worries for Walsall once again. But that's it. We've just about done it. So thank you to everyone for watching. We're still figuring out what to do over the Easter, but I'm sure we'll find some time to record a podcast or two. So thank you all for watching. Thank you for 1,000 subscribers again, and we'll see you in the next one.